You got to hear about tonight. You better start stockpiling, my friends. It's about to be lights out for light bulbs, at least those lowest wattage varieties. Starting January 1st, it will be illegal, against the law, to make or import those traditional 40 and 60-watt bulbs that you grew up with. Robert Bryce, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. How many of these have you stockpiled, my friend?
Jerry, I started buying some. Well, I have about 60 in my garage now. I bought them. I bought them last year when I first heard about them outlawing these bulbs. I bought them because I have LEDs. I've tried them. I've tried the compact fluorescents. I just find the incandescents, the light is better. I prefer them. So rather than have them outlawed or not be able to get them, I'm stockpiling.
Now, I read, and I have to give you this pushback here. This is what I read. You tell me if it's true. They say that only 10% of the energy that one of these incandescents uses actually goes to light. The rest is used up in heat. So it sounds like they're not very efficient, Robert.
That's true, Jerry. They're not very efficient. The current models of incandescents that we're using now are essentially the same as the model that Thomas Edison perfected about 1882. We've been using essentially the same technology for 130 years. But what other technology, what other world-changing invention such as this one has been outlawed? I can't think of another one. The incandescent changed the world, and now we're going to outlaw it. Consumers don't buy the most efficient model necessarily of anything. They buy what works for them.
Yeah, just look at the Prius.
Work well.
Look at the Prius compared to trucks, right? I mean, people buy the trucks. They're not necessarily the most energy efficient. We have the Energy Act of 2007 to thank for this light bulb ban and other great things like ethanol. Thanks a lot for that. How did we get into, I mean, George Bush signed this. How did we get into this mess that we're banning these bulbs?
Well, you're right. It's the legacy of the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. And this was pushed. In fact, I remember Representative Jane Harman pushed this specific plank of the legislation saying it was going to transform the U.S., make us energy independent. The reality is that was a load of bunk. The reality is that consumers, again, they buy what works. I buy incandescents because I like the color of the light more than what we get from LEDs. But I think this is just another example of government overreaching here. Let the market decide. If I want an LED, if I want a more efficient bulb, I'll buy it. If I don't, let me buy the one that I like.
I got to tell you, the light from those new bulbs are horrible. What's more, they have mercury in them, people. If you break it, you're like, you got to have, people in flak jackets come in and clean it up. I mean, right?
Well, that's not quite true. I'll
How would you say it?
The LED bulbs are getting better, but they're still quite expensive relative to incandescents. But I think you made a good point, though, Jerry, on efficiency. We now sell Ford, Chevy, and Dodge combined sell 7 times as many pickups as Toyota sells Priuses. This is an example of consumer choice. They want to buy the vehicle that works for them, not necessarily the one that's most efficient.
I think that's true, but there are downsides, as I was mentioning, to these compact fluorescent bulbs, and they do have mercury in them, and sometimes they leak, and sometimes they emit UV rays. Tell us about the downsides of this technology.
Well, the compact fluorescents, that's been talked about a lot. They have some mercury in them. If you break one, then you do have to be very careful in how you clean them up. But I think the bigger issue is the initial cost. The initial cost of incandescents is very low. The operating costs are, of course, higher. I have one LED. I bought it because I wanted to see what it looked like. I have it in my garage. It cost me $50.
Ouch.
But again, I wanted to see how, and the light on it is very nice, very bright. But that's one of the impediments for people buying CFLs, the compact fluorescents, versus the LEDs, et cetera. They're substantially more expensive. You make it up in the long run. They're more efficient, not as expensive to operate, but the upfront cost is a serious downside.
I just like the light. It's just what I prefer from the regular old-fashioned light bulbs. It makes everything, including me, look better. And you got to do what you can do. At my age, you're willing to try anything. Robert, thanks for coming on the show tonight. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jerry.